Hello again, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got a blizzard warning currently out, and continues for tonight here for the Yukon Delta coast over to St. Lawrence Island, as well as the Bering Strait coast, and that's for total 2 to 4 inches of additional snowfall during the night tonight, and winds gusting 40 to 50 miles an hour, creating whiteout conditions at times in that blowing snow. And then there's a winter weather advisory out for Selawik, Kotzebue, and Norvik. That's out for tonight for snow and blowing snow, gusting, mostly blowing snow. Could get a little bit of additional snowfall, but winds kicking up to 45 miles an hour, creating lower visibilities in snow and blowing snow. And then a winter weather advisory out later tonight through tomorrow here for the Koyukuk Valley and the Yukon Flats for the same sort of conditions, snow and blowing snow with winds gusting up to 35 miles an hour, reducing visibility to a half mile or less at times there. And then also for Bristol Bay, winter weather advisory out for tonight through about 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon for snow and blowing snow. And that's mostly Dillingham westward, especially out toward Togiak and Cape Newenham. We'll see the worst conditions there. And from that, taking a look at public service announcement, actually, what you could call this, for potentially hazardous driving conditions for Thursday evening through Friday, and that's for Anchorage, Madanuska, the Susitna Valleys, and the Kenai Peninsula. And of course, with the temperatures dropping below freezing tonight, actually this evening, going below freezing, some areas a little earlier, some areas a little later, but definitely going to see colder temperatures tonight than what we've seen the last couple of nights. So the residual water on the roadways will refreeze and become pretty slick. So as usual, as always, drive with caution, allow extra time to reach your destination. And satellite imagery showing clouds exiting the southeast coast here, with the rain and showers diminishing across the panhandle this afternoon, and then clouds here over the eastern interior areas, clearing out over Cook Inlet this afternoon back into the western Alaska range, and also some clearing up over the, not too much though, but kind of pretty cloudy day up there actually over the northern interior. And then the next system here coming eastward and to the north there, kind of spreading some moisture currently down to half a mile and blowing snow, and snow at Macoriac there on Nunivak Island as winds kick up to 40 to 50 miles an hour out of the east and southeast there. Warmer temperatures behind this system here with the southerly flow. Pribilofs up into the upper 30s today with rain, extending all the way down to the eastern Aleutians. Then a break back here, much lighter winds and dry conditions, a couple of bands of showers farther to the west there. And rolling this through again, you can see the progression of the system moving south to north and mostly to the northeast there. This area trying to break through, but having not too much moisture with that, mostly mid and high level clouds here into northeastern Bristol Bay. On the chart, see the snow and blowing snow developing here in the tighter gradient in advance of the front, pushing onto the southwest coast during the day today and up towards St. Lawrence Island, and then that turns to rain due to the due southerly flow there, mild conditions across eastern Aleutians of the Pribilof Islands. Also lighter winds here in what you're seeing experiencing up in the northern portion of that front, and then a pretty good break here across Adak and Atka today with light winds, and then some more shower activity with that in closer to the main low center there south of the Komodorsky Islands. High pressure building in over the interior, drying it out, but still a lot of clouds left around and some snow showers tapering off. 1 to 2 inches of snow falling to Nana, Fairbanks today over toward Eagle and north there to the Arctic Village area. In areas of the north slope and the Arctic coast, seeing some light snow at times, and those northeast winds diminishing, still kicking up to about 30 miles an hour along the eastern Arctic coast though, and some good clearing here over south central Alaska down toward Kodiak Island. And for tonight, should see some fair amount of clearing over the panhandle with that system kicking all the way off just about off the chart there, and high pressure back to the west. So look for decreasing clouds, light winds for the southeast coast, variably cloudy, some areas clear, other areas mostly cloudy, but light winds, dry conditions, all of interior Alaska here, strong high pressure up over the northeast part of the state there, keeping this system mostly out to the west, directing it initially up to the north, the moisture there, snow and blowing snow from the northwest coast. Again, winter weather advisory out tonight for Kotzebue Sound, Selawik Valley areas, Seward Peninsula, and down across the Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island. Front continues to slowly weaken. Still a little breezy, but not too strong on the winds there. Some periods of light rain moving into the Alaska Peninsula. And under mild southerly conditions, Pribilof stay above freezing tonight with some rain and snow. Kind of a narrow band there. And then that break still out here to the west there for Adak and Atka. Pretty nice conditions through most of the night. Those snow showers starting to edge a little bit to the east. And moving on to tomorrow, we've got, again, high pressure here starting to slip off into the Yukon Delta, way up there, over 31 inches of mercury, 1,055 millibars. And that extends all the way down, actually into the Gulf of Alaska, linking up with another center there, west-southwest of the Queen Charlottes. So pretty dry conditions over the Panhandle, be some clouds, maybe a risk of a shower along the coast, but just a slight chance if it develops at all. South to north flow here brings a weak trough up, maybe a chance of rain into Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, occasional rain, light rain at times tomorrow with warmer temperatures there. And Yukon Delta is still cold enough for some light snow. And the snow and blowing snow continues St. Lawrence Island, but starting to improve there, Bering Strait coast, even in the afternoon in those locations. Otherwise, not much moisture making it inland, but a fair amount of clouds coming in on the flow aloft there, make it mostly cloudy over much of the interior, but most of the moisture staying back to the west along the coast. And some snow showers finally worked their way into Adak and Atka, but winds not too bad out here on the light side until the next big storm, an intense frontal system comes in to the western Aleutians, bringing storm force winds out of the south and southeast here with it, with increasing moisture, rain, and in advance of that stays pretty good here over the central and eastern Bering Sea. Kind of a weak trough right through here could produce some shower or light rain conditions, but very weak system there. Otherwise, a lot of leftover moisture moving into the interior there, producing areas of, probably won't be solid snow as it shows here, but a chance of snow showers down into the western Alaska range. Otherwise, areas of light snow, maybe a little more extensive here up over the northeast interior to the eastern central Arctic coast along that trough axis up there, but staying pretty good. Still some clearing. Cook Inlet eastward across Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound. Sunny skies through the first day of the weekend. Mostly sunny, call it there for the Panhandle. Definitely dry with light winds. And for the lows tonight, for the Panhandle, 30s. Lower 30s north, mid to upper 30s south. Single numbers, teens, 20s for the south central Alaska area, Coles and Copper River Basin, below zero there. Nikolai and McGrath, otherwise in the teens to lower 20s for Bristol Bay, near 30 for Kodiak. Highs tomorrow, mid-teens there around Golcana, Glen Ellen, Copper Center, and about 5 to 10 for the Kuskokwim Valley. Into the upper 30s there around King Salmon and Kodiak Island, with highs in the 20s. South central Alaska, mid-30s down toward Seldovia and Homer, and in the 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle. Lows the following morning, a little colder with the clearing skies, down to around 20 up around Skagway, Haines. Otherwise, lower 30s down to the south near zero, Kuskokwim Valley, Copper River Basin. 15 to 20, south central Alaska, lower to mid-30s for the Bristol Bay area, up, and then highs in the teens, Copper River Basin, Kuskokwim Valley, 20s to lower 30s, lower 40s down toward Homer and Kodiak, mid to upper 30s Bristol Bay, and 30s to near 40 for the Panhandle. Lows tonight, 15 to 25 below over the northern interior, milder out toward the Bering Strait, and then with that warm air coming northward, highs in the mid to upper 20s out here, and single number central interior, northeast part of the state to the Arctic coast, staying below zero, and a little milder, but still 15 to 20 below on the east side, and 21 for your low for Nome, followed by highs near freezing for the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula, and just about everybody else rising above zero except for Fort Yukon, Chalk-Itzig, and those areas out to the west. Looking at lows tonight in the 20s 20s along the southwest coast, lower 30s for the Pribilofs, near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, otherwise in the 30s. Highs tomorrow, some areas hitting the lower 40s, especially the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. 30s for Bristol Bay there, mid-30s for the Pribilofs, followed by Saturday morning lows around 30 for the southwest coast, upper 30s for the Aleutians. On Alaska, lower 40s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into flying weather with that system moving slowly eastward and mostly to the northeast here. A lot of IFR spreading up into the west coast and northwest interior, eastward there into the Kobuk Valley. Marginal VFR into the Kuskokwim Valley late tonight. A lot of IFR here, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and down across the Pribilofs, but good VFR out to the west, VFR central eastern interior from the North Gulf Coast to the Arctic coast, and southeast coast, still some IFR in areas there, but Lynn Canal Glacier Bay looking good with VFR. And for the afternoon tomorrow, good VFR central interior eastward into Canada, Arctic coast north slope, same thing, all the way down into the Gulf of Alaska. And the Panhandle now, good VFR from Lynn Canal all the way down to Dixon Entrance, maybe a little bit of marginal VFR along Prince of Wales Island coast. Not too bad though, IFR spreading in across Kodiak Island and into now the southwest interior with some marginal VFR trying to move up along the southern Alaska range there in the west, but staying VFR to the north and improving up here over the northwest interior, becoming marginal VFR with even some VFR breaking out. Lots of IFR eastern Bering Sea on down to the Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula. AKwx westward, VFR. And for the Saturday morning time frame, solid IFR here, eastern northern Bering Sea, well into the interior now. Big flow of moisture coming in from the southwest to northeast here. Bulk of it pushing up into the north central interior to the Koyukuk Valley, back to the western Arctic coast, and lower conditions now, mostly along the western Alaska range. Some IFR there, down to Kodiak Island, southern Cook Inlet, even Kachemak Bay on the edge of the IFR zone. Marginal VFR for the Madanuska-Susitna Valley, remainder of south central Alaska, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and about the eastern quarter of the state stays in the VFR zone all the way up to the central Arctic coast, and the Panhandle looking really good. For the afternoon, VFR looks like through the first day of the weekend anyway for the southeast coast and North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, marginal VFR, south central Alaska, and then IFR, Kodiak Island, and IFR out here over the west coast, eastern Bering Sea there down to Unalaska Island, and then Nikolsky trending toward VFR in the afternoon, good VFR out to the west here, next system pushing IFR way out there to Shimian at 2. Areas IFR now back into the Kobuk, maybe Koyukuk Valley, and IFR along the central Arctic coast. And for passes, Anatuvik, VFR becoming marginal VFR in the afternoon, maybe. I think Adigan will stay VFR, though, the entire day. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, starting out VFR, coming down to marginal VFR in the afternoon. Rainy, though, staying VFR tomorrow, either approach. Windy, VFR again. And Isabel, VFR. Mentasta VFR for the next couple of days, probably through Saturday afternoon. And Tanita VFR through tomorrow. Portage, good VFR flying through Portage Pass tomorrow, either approach, looking really good. Chilkoot and White, VFR for the next couple of days. Freezing levels at the surface, pushing northward here to Nunivak Island and right up across northern Cook Inlet, across Copper River Basin, 2,000 to 4,000 feet across the Panhandle there, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula. And from there, looking at icing, well, none here over the interior or in the east, Panhandle icing free, but a lot of moisture coming in from the west and southwest here, spreading possibly into Kodiak Island, southwest interior, mostly isolated moderate rime icing here, trailing back across the Alaska Peninsula and up across St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait, or Seward Peninsula there, more or less. And the jet stream here showing south to north flow here up to 106 65 knots there near just east of the Pribilof Island area, and lighter, more westerly back over the Aleutians, but ridging through here for lighter wind flow, westerlies at about 100 knots through the north central interior, and at 9,000 feet, ridge high perch center down here with a ridge extending up into the central and east central interior. Southwest flow up to 60 knots, pushing that moisture in to the southwest interior and even up to the north tomorrow. And at 3,000 feet south, 55 knots there across the southwest interior, light winds in the east and even the panhandle there. As far as turbulence goes, moderate turbulence here, Kuskokwim Valley down to the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the eastern Seward Peninsula area. Pretty smooth to the east and out to the west.
Hi there, Polaris pals. Trace here. The sky is a constantly moving sea of stars, galaxies, nebulae, comets, planets, and even orbiting objects like the International Space Station. To find things, you really need to orient yourself. What better way than with the North Star? Hit the darkness anytime, but we're using 9 p.m. here. And look for the Big Dipper, one of the most recognizable asterisms in the sky. It's part of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Using the 2 stars on the end of the Dipper, Merak and Dubhe, you can make an arrow right to Polaris, the North Star. Polaris isn't the brightest star in the sky, far from it, but it has a special distinction in that its position aligns with the North Pole of our spinning planet, so it appears stationary. Over time, the Earth's axis moves, called precession, so in the future, Polaris won't be the North Star, it'll be a different star somewhere in the sky. So we'll have to figure it out. Keep looking up.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining me once again is Cindy Preller. She is the Tsunami Program Manager for the National Weather Service in Alaska region. Thanks for joining us again, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
We're talking about tsunami awareness and safety here in Alaska especially, and one of the things that has been one of your main focuses is the Tsunami Ready program. What is that, and how do Alaskans find out more?
Awesome. Yeah, Tsunami Ready is a National Weather Service hosted program in partnership with Storm Ready.
Okay.
And it is a program that we conduct with our partners in the state, but it's mostly community driven. So if a community wants to become tsunami ready, well, the first thing they need to do is get a hold of me or their local WCM at a weather forecast office or their tsunami team at the state level. So,
and this is something that's a NOAA grant, so there's money available to help encourage the preparedness at the local level there in the city or the village.
Yeah.
What are some of the places that have done this already?
Oh, our oldest tsunami ready city is Seward, you know, but also Sitka, Homer, Valdez are the, you know, the main players, but we've got several tsunami ready communities that I'm very proud of. It takes several years to accomplish this. And so a few of the things that they do is the tsunami risk will be assessed by someone like me or another scientist will help find out, you know, really what their probability is. We'll create an inundation map, an evacuation map. They'll have a mitigation plan. We will set up some partnerships with the schools, make an evacuation shelter, and then they need to practice. But it is the city that owns the program, really. It's up to them. And many cities would like to have sirens, and so we help them get those, and, you know, and they practice. They have to practice.
Sure. So let's say I'm driving into a place like Seward that's tsunami ready. What are some of the things I should look for as maybe a visitor so I know maybe where I need to go or can be more aware of my tsunami risk? Absolutely.
The tsunami ready signage is really blatant. It's this, you know, blue and white curling wave sign, and there's different shapes of signs that'll show you if you are in the hazard zone or where the evacuation routes are and when you're out of shelter.
Okay. So this is a multi-step process that helps the residents be more aware of their own risk, but then also prepare for when that risk arrives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, many communities sound their sirens daily. Some sound them weekly, you know, to make sure everybody knows what they mean. And there's often drills. We have an annual drill once a year. We have Tsunami Awareness Preparedness Week, and that's a good time for each community to do some exercising.
Okay. And is this a program that is unique to Alaska?
Absolutely not. It's national.
Okay.
And all over the country, you'll have the same signage, so it's consistent.
Good. So if I'm taking the kids to California, I should be able to see something familiar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, you know, some communities hesitate because they think it'll discourage tourism. And so I would like to tell those communities that what they're actually doing is they're encouraging responsibility.
Sure.
The tsunami's going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to hit every coastline. So, you know, it's not about when. It'll be any time. So the fact that they're showing tourists that they are making steps to be prepared for this, I think would encourage people to want to stay there.
Right, and that would be no different than, say, you or I visiting the Midwest, where we know there's going to be really bad thunderstorms and maybe there's a risk for tornadoes. We're aware of that risk when we go there.
Absolutely. If I see a sign for a tornado shelter, I'm going to remember that.
Right. Okay. All right, so we're just doing a better job of being more prepared with something that's bound to happen again.
I hope so.
Okay, very good. Where can people go again to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program here in Alaska?
Well, one, there is a Tsunami Ready website. So, you know, just Tsunami Ready, and that'll get you there. And then probably the best person for people to contact is their warning coordination meteorologist at their local weather forecast office, which is Anchorage or Juneau, most likely.
Okay, all right. So most of the folks along the Bering Sea coast, again, are not at a huge risk for tsunamis.
No, they don't need to worry about it.
Okay, very
Thank you.
good. But always learning to be prepared no matter where you are in Alaska, no matter what the risk, always a good step. And tsunami is a major player in that, as we well know from events like 1964. Okay.
Alaskans are resilient. I really believe in them.
Very good, very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us again, and please make an effort to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program in your village and town if you haven't already. We'll be back with Cindy again next time to talk more about the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. We actually have a group of geologists working for the National Weather Service, so scratch your head on that one, and we'll join you next time. I'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Packs.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the marine forecast here along the southeast coast. On the south coast, small craft advisories, northwest winds 25 knots for Friday. North coast, northwest 15 to 20 knots. Northern central inner channels, looking at small craft advisories, northwesterlies 25 knots. Clarence Strait, same thing, northwest winds 25 knots, seas around 4 to 5 feet. And for the day Saturday, northeast winds 25 knots on the south coast, north coast, north to northwest 15 to 25 knots. Lincoln Canal Glacier Bay, north winds 30 knots, seas up to 8 feet. Northeast 30-knot winds here for Stevens Passage with seas at 5 feet. Clarence Strait, winds northwest at 25 knots. Prince William Sound, west winds for the day Friday at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. West winds 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast here with 7-foot seas. Barren Islands, light variable wind conditions for the day Friday, and northeast at 30 knots for Kamishak Bay. Southern Cook Inlet, northeast winds 25 knots. North of the Forelands, though, winds will be north at 10 knots with seas down to about 2 feet. Northeast at 10 knots for Northern Cook Inlet on Saturday. Northeast 15 Southern Cook Inlet. Kamishak Bay looking at a northeast wind at 20 knots. Barren Islands, east winds 20 knots, seas 6 feet. North Gulf Coast really laying down, variable at 10 knots with seas around 5 feet or so. Prince William Sound, not too bad. Winds variable to northeast at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. And moving out to Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, northeast winds 25 knots, otherwise southeast at 20. And Bristol Bay, east winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, southeast winds at 25 knots with 6 to 13-foot seas. And for the day on Saturday, not much change here. Southeast winds 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, southeast at 25 for Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, mostly southeast winds at 20 knots, except Shelikof Strait will be out of the northeast. For the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, south to southeast winds 15 to 25 knots with seas 9 to 17 feet. Akanatka, south winds at about 20 knots, and then small craft advisories here for the western Aleutians. For southerly winds, 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 24 feet out towards Shimei and Attu. And then for Saturday, north to northeast winds 20 to 25 knots, eastern Aleutians. Akanatka, east-southeast winds at 30 knots with seas 7 to 13 feet. Storm warnings at intense frontal system coming into the western Aleutians there. These winds will be coming up from the southeast, 50 to 55 knots with seas building to 33 feet from Kiska to Shimei. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, southeast winds 25 knots, southeast 25 also for St. Matthew Island. Pribilof, south winds at 20, seas up to around 10 feet though. Brisk wind advisories there for the St. Lawrence Island area for east winds at 25 knots. And then for Saturday, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, south winds at 15 knots. Yukon Delta coast, southeast at 20. Southeast winds 30 knots, St. Lawrence Island, or St. Matthew Island. Pribilof's east winds at 20 knots, and east winds at 25 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Eastern Arctic coast, east winds 15 knots tomorrow. Western Arctic coast, east winds at 20 knots. Chukchi Sea, east winds 30 knots. And then for Saturday, southeast winds 30 knots for the Chukchi Sea, and for the western Arctic coast, east winds at 20 knots. Same thing for the central coast, east at 20, and not much different for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. East winds 20 to as high as 25 knots. Strongest here, Barter Island to Kaktovik and those areas. For tonight, light winds up there tonight, though, and through much of interior Alaska as well. Blizzard warning tonight for the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, and blowing snow there with reduced visibilities, but drying out over the Panhandle. Rain for the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and for Friday, fair skies with a lot of clouds coming into the interior due to upper level wind flow pulling that moisture in, but the precipitation producing clouds staying back here to the southwest, and not much really getting in past the Seward Peninsula here in the west. Mostly sunny for the Panhandle with some clouds, maybe a risk of a shower, and then areas of snow possible over the central northern interior on Saturday, even with this strong 1,041 millibar high over the Tanana Valley there, but best chance would be up here in the north to the Arctic coast, but those amounts no more than a couple inches at the most. Stays clear and dry over the Panhandle with gusty outflow winds in the channeled areas. Dry south central Alaska. Big storm with storm force winds out.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.